Hi, today we're reading Front Desk by Kelly Yang, Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Honey, we've been thinking, my dad said when I got home from school that day. I was still mad about my conversation with Jason. Maybe it's not such a good idea you watch the front desk. Clearly it's dangerous, my mom said. After what happened? No, I said firmly. That was not the solution. And besides, who's going to watch it if I don't? I will, my mother said. I shook my head. Dad can't clean all the rooms by himself. He was barely managing as it was, even with my mom, and they still wouldn't let me anywhere near the maid cart because of the chemicals. Every day the two of them cleaned until well past sunset. They both lost so much weight. They constantly had sweat stains on their shirts and smelled of Clorox. I can manage by myself, my dad insisted. No, you can't. I turned to my mom. Sorry, Mom, I'm not giving you my job. The front desk was my chocolate notebook, and I was not letting it go. No way. I plopped down on the front desk stool and gazed at the wallpaper at the spot where the security camera was supposed to go. Why can't we just tell him he has to get us some cameras? Or else, I asked my parents. Because he knows there's no or else, my dad said softly. I bit my lip. It's just so unfair, I said. My mother sighed. She walked over and put a hand on my shoulders. We're immigrants, she said. Our lives are never fair. My dad nodded. We have to try, he said. We have to try and accept our fate. My parents were always going on about fate. Sometimes I wondered if this fate thing was just something adults made up to make themselves feel better, like the tooth fairy. And really, it's not so bad, my dad said, his face brightening. We have a roof over our heads. We have each other. That's right, my mom said. It could be a lot worse. Look at Ming, my dad added. He didn't mention the loan sharks, but he didn't need to. We were all thinking it. My parents let me keep my job, but only after I told them I would make a sign saying security camera installed and put it up in the front office. Even though we didn't have a security camera, people could think we had a camera. Billy Bob, one of the weeklies, came into the front office. He pointed at the sign and asked, Where's the new security camera? I looked down at my hands. There isn't one, I admitted. I told him about Mr. Yao and how he rejected all my ideas because they were too expensive. Billy Bob sighed. I'm sorry to hear that, he said, but you know what? Come here, let me show you something. I followed him out to the parking lot. The two of us stood in front of Billy Bob's old blue station wagon. See that sticker on my car? Billy Bob asked, pointing to a shiny sticker on the driver's side window. I squinted at the words. It said, Don't touch. Alarm system installed. Billy Bob leaned over, cupped his hand, and whispered into my ear, There's no alarm system. I smiled. Later that day, a small hatchback pulled up beside Billy Bob's station wagon. A Chinese guy came bouncing out of it, running up to my dad and shaking his hand furiously. He told him he was a friend of Uncle Ming's and asked if he could stay here for the night. Any friend of Ming's is a friend of mine, my dad smiled. That night, as my mom prepared dinner, Uncle Lee stood next to her, beaming at the sweet and sour pork, rubbing his hands while the wok sizzled. I haven't even tasted it, and I know it's delicious, he praised my mother, who blushed with pride. Thanks, my mom said. You don't know what it's been like for me these last few months, Uncle Lee said. He told us that he met Ming working in the kitchen of a burger place. All day we'd make these juicy burgers for the customers. You know, the kind with real thick beef. My stomach nodded. That's why I took the job, for the burgers. But for lunch, you know what the boss would give us? A sandwich of 2 slices of white bread and some mayonnaise. The whole thing was white. No meat? My dad asked. No meat. No lettuce? My mom asked, popping a spring roll into her mouth as she sat down. How about some tomato? I asked. Nope, just white on white on white, day after day after day. White on white on white. That's not a sandwich, that's an envelope. My father shook his head at his new friend's misfortune. So you know what I did? The man asked, leaning in, as if to let us in on a secret. What? Every day I made a delicious hamburger and wrapped it up carefully. I put it in a bag and then I threw it into the trash, he said. Then, every day after work, I'd go find it. You what? My mother dropped her chopsticks. Everyone stopped eating. It wasn't always easy, let me tell you. Some days my body was completely inside the dumpster and all you'd see were these two little legs kicking in the air. But I always managed to find my burger in the end, he said triumphantly. My eyes slid over to the trash can in the kitchen, overflowing with potato peels, and eggshells. I pictured two little legs sticking out. Did anyone ever see you? I asked. He shrugged, like, so what if they did? I marveled at the guy, at his bravery. He didn't even care if anyone saw him. That was the amazing part. I think I definitely would have cared. When I found my burger, it was the most incredible feeling ever. I devoured it right then and there. I couldn't wait, he said, beaming. I pictured him sitting on top of a mountain of trash, flies buzzing around him, feet tapping on corn cobs and banana peels as he tucked into his burger. What's the name of this restaurant again? My dad asked. It's called Ray's Burgers down in Carlsbad, Uncle Lee said. The boss's name was Ray, my dad asked. No, the boss's name was Yi Feng, but Ray's Burgers sounds a lot better than Yi Feng's Burgers. My dad chuckled. He pointed to the pen on the table. Grab that pen, will you, Mia? Write down Ray's Burgers. Yeah, tell your friends that is one place you never want to work, Uncle Lee said, reaching for another spring roll. I went to my room and found an empty journal. In it I wrote, Restaurant in Carlsbad, Ray's Burgers. Boss only feeds workers white on white on white. I showed it to my dad. In Chinese? He said, so we can all read it. Underneath the English, I started writing in Chinese, stopping when I got to the word burger. How do you write burger? I asked my mom. My mom frowned, taking the pen from me. 2 years in America and she's nearly forgotten all her Chinese, she said apologetically to Uncle Lee. English is more important anyway, he said, batting away her concern. My mother sighed. That's the thing about moving kids from one country to another. They're not good at either language. Her words sat on my shoulders, heavy as rocks. I looked down at my feet and nearly jumped when my mother touched my hand. But she does all the math at the front desk, don't you, honey? She said, smiling at me.